Does each and every past event have an effect on every future event? Do we go through life as passive observers, or do our actions come from somewhere within ourselves? Are the opportunities afforded to us a unique benefit or an inescapable curse? From time to time, I have memories of my past, which remind me of how lucky I am to be alive at the present time. This is a presentation of some of those memories. I am Jeffrey Russell, a computer science student at the University of Pretoria. I was born in Durban, South Africa, to my mom and my dad. My dad was a programmer turned businessman, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. I was very different from my older sisters, and, according to my mother, much more compliant. At the tender age of 5, our family moved to Atlanta, USA, bringing along our piano and many other belongings in a container. My mom had a job as a teacher at a school for the gifted. This school was called Deo Preparatory School, and I went there for grade 1 and 2. Up until this point, my learning had come from my parents, who had taught me how to read and to write, and perhaps more importantly, how to think. In first grade at Deo, my teacher, Mrs. Jackson, drilled many things into me, which gave me an excellent foundation upon which to build my education in the future. The school closed down due to financial issues at the end of my second grade year, and my mom decided to homeschool me as she had done with my older sisters when they first started school. Soon after, we moved to Northern Virginia, which is right next to Washington, D.C. Now, for a little bit of background about my parents. My mom did a double major at Wits in genetics and mathematics. She then did an honors in education. My dad started a double major at Wits in computer science and psychology, which he then finished through UNISA. He has always enjoyed reading, and so, when he realized that books were so cheap in the US, he bought about 40 books on programming and computer science for himself, and, of course, in the hope that either my sisters or myself would read them. His wish was granted when I was bored one day and looked for a random book on our shelves in Northern Virginia. It was a book about game programming, and I was hooked. I downloaded Blitz Basic, the program that it used, and then read through the book cover to cover. I enjoyed it immensely and continued to write random code to do things in this programming language for quite a while. I learned a lot about the basics of programming through this process. Looking back, this experience was incredibly important as it gave a very positive first impression about programming. At about this time, in the middle of 2008, I was invited by a friend to join him along with one other friend in a LEGO robotics team. It was an exciting experience, and my background in computers helped me to improve our robot. We did very well in the competition and made it to the provincial level, where we took home a top award for our robot's performance. My dad was working for PwC at this point, and his job required that he needed to learn Java for some or other project that would start shortly after. In order to learn this new programming language, he decided to order a book about it to read. The book he got was called Head First Java, a book which I still have in my shelf. He never ended up reading it, but of course I did. This was my first taste of a complex and intricate programming language, and it was fascinating. The book was excellent and really captured my interest. I thoroughly enjoyed reading it and wrote many simple programs in Java. That all happened between my first and second year of LEGO Robotics. In the second year, the theme was Smart Move. The idea was to come up with solutions to transportation issues. In our project, we decided to implement a traffic simulator and figure out the best way to optimize traffic. The bulk of the work on the simulator came down to me. I wrote the simulator with a program called GameMaker. My mentor through this process was my best friend's dad, who had his PhD in AI, artificial intelligence, and this is when my fascination with AI began. I decided at that point that I wanted to do my doctorate in AI. To this day, this is still my goal. Unlike most people my age, I was totally certain of what I wanted to do, and I stuck to it through everything else that happened in between. Back to the LEGO competition. We again got to the provincial competition, but this time at the provincial competition, we won first place and were therefore able to go to the world competition. At the world competition, a couple of months later, we walked off with the second best robot performance, to Germany of course. This experience really propelled me into wanting to do programming as a career. Although at this time I didn't have my own computer, and so it was a bit difficult to do it consistently. This all changed when my dad was asked by a friend to do some web development. He began the work before realizing that it would probably be a good learning experience for me, and so he gave me the work. I quickly learned how to use multiple web development tools including PHP, MySQL, HTML, and JavaScript. I worked for most of my summer vacation on this project, and by the end of it, my dad said he would provide the money for me to build my own computer. I learned a lot about computers from doing this building project, as I had decided to use Linux on it, and Linux, although awesome, is a mission to set up and get running exactly the way you want it. I stumbled across Minecraft at this time, which was in the middle of 2010, through a friend who shared my interest in computers. My dad gave me further projects which I continued to do. At this point, I was still homeschooled. At the end of 2011, we had to leave America to come back to South Africa because of visa issues with my dad's work and such. Adjusting back to South Africa was quite hard, but in terms of my interest in technology, perhaps the biggest issue was that internet speeds are so much slower here in SA as opposed to in the US. I started at Pretoria Boys High School in 2012 in the middle of grade 9. I decided against IT in grade 10 because it seemed irrelevant to what I wanted to do, and music was a much more interesting subject. The rest of my high school career, I continued to do small projects for my dad. Then, in matric, the decision came up as to what to do the following year, but of course, because of my conviction, it was a simple choice. Of course I was going to do computer science. It was the logical stepping stone to a PhD in AI. And here I am, in first year at the University of Pretoria, studying computer science. I hope that my goal of that PhD comes true. I have been afforded many opportunities in my life through various different channels, and I have attempted to grab as many as was possible. I think that the journey of my life so far has, although with twists and turns, prepared me for a future in an academically literate world.